Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the terrible lighting conditions that come with recording during the daytime for me. I'm awake at normal people hours. My hair's a mess, and I had my 6 month appointment for testosterone today. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and I have stuff to get done for the rest of the week. So we're gonna hop in today with our life. So without further ado, let's just get into this. Let's hop into this. Let's see here. So I need to go to load, so I make sure I click the right one. Airy. Okay. Um. Hmm. I think we choose growing. I think we'll just go through them in a line. Early one afternoon, you found yourself in the living room with your family. It was another one of those summer days where it felt too hot to go outside, but it was too uncomfortable to do anything inside either. The air conditioner was cranked up as far as you could negotiate it, but everyone was still being pretty lazy. Your moms, and sister were lounging around while the TV blared on in the background, ignored by all of you. You specifically were laying spread eagle on the carpet, sitting cross legged on the floor, perched on the arm. I would be draped over the coffee table, that cool wood against my skin. The surface had been nice and cool to the touch at first, but now your skin was sticking to it. Elizabeth broke the silence with a loud groan. You glanced over. She was laying on her back over the couch, massaging her calf with one hand. Ugh, I feel terrible. I'm dying in this house and my leg hurts. Mom looked up from the magazine she'd barely been flipping through and frowned concern. Could you have strained it somehow? Elizabeth flailed briefly, then flopped onto her side with a heavy sigh. I don't know, it just hurts. Okay, sweetheart. Ma got up from her seat at the kitchen table and then walked over to your sister. She did a light pat on Elizabeth's shoulder sympathetically. Ugh, I keep forgetting to grab water. My throat's already dry. But you know what? We'll live with it. We can do this, guys. Not my favorite. But we're going. We're going. I'm sorry to have to you have to deal with that. Maybe it's growing pains. You could be taller by next fall. Elizabeth scoffed. She didn't look impressed by Ma's assessment. I'd rather be my height forever than deal with this. Mom walked over too, leaning against the back of the couch. Kids, they grow up so fast. Everybody hopping in right now, apparently. Soon Elizabeth will have a home of her own, maybe even with a nice husband and some kids if she feels like it. She sniffed loudly and wiped her eye, but you could tell that it was just a bit. You tilted your head even though you knew Elizabeth liked guys. It was hard to imagine her with a boyfriend or a husband. She'd only seem invested in hanging out with her group of friends, not chasing after boys. Mom must agree with you because she shook her head. Let's not exaggerate, she's practically a child. But if you ever do pursue romance, Elizabeth, you can come talk to me about it. Definitely, we're always willing to lend an ear. Elizabeth's features contorted in disgust. No way, I'm not talking to my moms about that. Mom's jaw dropped, and she gasped in an exaggerated, rated display of shock. Her hand came up to rest against her chest. Ma only grinned. She didn't look offended by Elizabeth's quick response at all. It really wouldn't be so bad to come to us. I know what it's like to have a crush on a pretty boy or two, but I don't care. I can listen anyway. Uh, but I don't. I don't, but I can listen anyway. Why is my brain having such a hard time today? It's probably because I got my blood drawn, and so, ooh, all right. Uh, Mom snorted at her own joke while Ma burst into giggles. They were having a little too much fun at Elizabeth's expense. Do you just see the scowl on her face? She is not amused, man. But to be fair, who would be at that point? Ma snorted at her own joke while Ma burst into giggles. They were having a little too much fun at Elizabeth's expense. Elizabeth certainly wasn't feeling the amusement because she rolled her eyes and sat up. I'm going back to my room. I'd rather melt alone, thanks. She strode off towards the staircase, taking the steps two at a time. Your mom stared after her, then turned to each other with raised eyebrows. Whoops, looks like we scared her off with all that romance talk. Oh well, we'll get her next time. You watched them titter with some surprise. Obviously, your mom's like women, but you had no idea that Ma liked guys too. Today was the first time you'd heard her say something like that. Wait, you had a crush on guys since when? Ma turned to you, happy to bring you into things now that you'd spoken up. She smiled and nodded. Always, I like both. But I like your mom the most out of everyone. She's special. Ma smiled and turned all soft in the corners like it usually did when she looked at her. She pinched Mom's cheek lightly. Mom reached up and cupped her hand over Ma's. Even when Ma stopped pulling her cheek, their hands remained clasped together. Thanks, Lonnie. I think most women have charm, but no one can hold a candle to you. Aw, Pamela. Ugh. Ma beamed, then kissed Mom on the cheek she'd been pinching before. You laughed at their antics. You thought the moment was very sweet. You cringed at your parents. It's a kind of a sweet moment. You smiled to yourself at the sight. No matter how often your moms expressed their feelings for each other, it was always nice to witness it. Ma looked back to you, letting Mom's hand go down with a brief squeeze. Settling down next to you, Ma followed soon after. You know, I'm also here to listen to you whenever you're ready. The offer isn't just for Elizabeth. She bumped her shoulder with yours, reassuring smile in place. There's no rush, of course. You can take all the time you need to figure out what or who you want. Don't think you have to stick with whatever you come up with right now, either. Life's nice like that. It can change and you can learn. Mom nodded her head in agreement. The two of us are happy to hear you out, and we may be able to relate better than you think. Still, we won't push the topic, at least most of the time. She gave Ma the weakest, scathing look possible while being unable to stop grinning. Thanks, you nodded silently. You shrugged. You don't have to worry about it. I'd rather pass on all that. I'd rather pass. Oh, let's go with we don't have to. You don't have to worry about it. Don't worry. We're your parents, sweetie. We'll always worry. Mom let out another exaggerated sniffle. It didn't take a genius to realize it was fake. First Elizabeth, and now you, Ari. Do you have to grow up? Yes, children tend to do that from time to time. Your parents quickly grew absorbed in their conversation about rearing kids. You took that as your cue to leave, getting up so you could spend some time alone in your room, too. They let you go without a problem, so you made your way up the stairs. You let it aside once you stepped into your room. It was just as sweltering in there as it was in the living room, possibly even a little warmer. You couldn't even open your window since it was hotter outside. You just let out all the AC. You dragged your feet across the room. You checked your current sweltering conditions in the mirror as you passed it by. You thought back to the conversation you had downstairs about growing up, and that after that moment, after a moment, you stepped a bit closer to the mirror. You stared into it, then turned away from the surface to look at yourself. You were definitely growing, all right. It was weird to think about how you were now in comparison to what you were when you were younger. When it came to your body, you know what? We're going to go with slender. We're going for a very neutral look here. Well, let's go with some muscle definitions. A little beefy, actually. You shifted to the side, your head still facing forward and continuing the self evaluation from this viewpoint. At birth, you were assigned female. At birth, you were assigned male. At birth, you were intersex. Um, I say for this, we go female. What you were born, what you were born as impacted the way your body grew, but it wasn't what really determined who you were. When it came to your figure, your chest was flat for now, but that would likely change at least as you got older. You're starting to develop breasts. You already had noticeable boobs. You aim to have breasts through hormone therapy, not to have breasts through hormone therapy. Um, I say for this, like, it's not how I would do it, but I'm trying to do something a little different. Let's go. We already have boobs. Okay. I already had boobs at this point. Like, it's a normal thing. There was no mistaking it. Even with your shirt helping to obscure your form, you had boobs now. You reached over and massaged your scar with one hand, staring intently at it in the mirror. By now, you knew it was there to stay. You took a step back, finished with your impromptu inspection. You locked eyes with your reflection, cocking your head to the side, all things considered. You thought you looked fantastic. You didn't look bad. You had no idea how you felt. You were simply neutral. You were self conscious. You just wanted to look different than you did. You know what? We'll go with we didn't look bad, guys. We're cute to begin with. A slight smile tugged at your mouth. Sure, maybe you wouldn't be a model or anything, but you weren't half bad. You shook your head roughly, putting thoughts of what you were turning into out of your mind. This wasn't the time to focus on such things. You had to find something. You had to find something to do in this heat. You shuffled over to your bed, collapsing on the mattress, your brow scrunched up in thought. Time passed slowly, and to your annoyance, possible ideas about what to do were few and far between. You weren't sure how long it had been, but eventually you heard your mom calls from downstairs. Ari, Cove will be coming over soon, just letting you know. You frowned in confusion, but you didn't bother complaining. It had been decided already. Okay. With a sigh, you pushed yourself off your bed and headed downstairs. Might as well, since he would be there in a few minutes. Like, even if they're not friends, they're still making a point to have them hang out because they're neighbors. You need to go downstairs soon anyway because your empty stomach told you it was almost time for lunch. Just as you reached the bottom of the stairs, you saw Mom put the phone back on the receiver. She glanced at Ma, her mouth open to say something, and when she caught the sight of you, she blinked in surprise. Oh, hi, kiddo. I didn't mean you. I didn't mean you needed to come down right the second. If you wanted to wait for him here, though, that's great. We'll get out of your way. You and Cove have fun, all right? With that, your moms made their way down the hall. You heard the floors creak until they reached their room on the other side of the house. Now you were alone in the living room, tasked with waiting for Cove. You weren't exactly thrilled to have to host Cove so suddenly, but you were used to it by now. Who knew what he wanted this time? You took a seat at the kitchen counter and settled in for the wait. As expected, there was a knock on the door a few minutes later. When you got up and answered, your neighbor was standing on the other side. He came in once you stepped aside to let him pass, giving him a little wave. You returned his wave, half-hearted one of your own, before you closed the door behind him. He sighed and wiped his face a bit. You noticed a sheen of sweat across his brow. He must be glad to be back in air-conditioned place, even if he only had to walk across the street to get here. So what's with the sudden visit? It's too hot to do anything, but my parents don't think so. It's like they don't even notice. I figured coming here would mean I could just sit. Your mom said it was okay. Oh, all right, I can get that. If your moms insisted on doing activities in this heat, you'd want to make a quick escape too. Thankfully, they weren't immune to the weather like coasts seem to be. What, were you doing something? Not really. I just need to get lunch soon. I haven't eaten anything today. Would it be all right if I had lunch too? You thought about it briefly before lightly nodding. I guess it should be fine. As soon as you headed into the kitchen, you crossed your arms as you glanced around, wondering what you should scrounge up for a meal. I don't want to eat anything that's warmed up. Is there anything cold or not cooked? Yeah. After a bit of back and forth, you two concluded that you should raid the fridge and cabinets in order to make sandwiches. With that settled, you had planned to decide on the outside layer first. There was a wild variety to choose from since everyone in your house had their own favorites. There was white bread, wheat bread, sourdough, mixed grains, gluten-free bread, pita, and pita pockets. Could you take the grain one for me? Sure. You reached for the mixed grains and then made your decision. I found out that I am allergic to gluten. It was a few months ago at this point, which it didn't really come to as a surprise to anybody in my family because my mom's allergic to gluten, my brother's allergic to gluten, my grandfather, both of my grandfathers, my grandmother, like so many people. So it was like, well, just another one to the list. So we're gonna go with gluten-free bread. As weird as that sounds. And actually, gluten-free bread isn't that bad, guys. Like, when I started eating gluten-free bread, I was a little bit like, Oh my god, I hate this so much. Because when my parents started eating gluten-free bread, what's it called? It was when gluten-free had just become a thing, and so there wasn't a lot of options, and the options we had weren't really good. But now that we're 10 years down the line and my mom's eating gluten-free all that time, there's a lot better stuff. Like, I don't mind eating gluten-free bread now because it's not weird and dense and has the weirdest texture. And gluten-free things don't have this weird flavor to them that they had before. And it's just a lot better. Um, then you had to decide what main direction the sandwich would go in. I like both, but if I'm eating it for like lunch, I want a savory sandwich. Something savory would make it feel like a real meal. And for the specific ingredients, I worked at Subway for 2 years. And the way I make my sandwiches, guys, oh, let's see here. Chicken is not an option, so we're going to go with turkey. And then lettuce, tomatoes, onions, cucumber, avocado, peppers, no pickles, pepper jack. Here we go. I like a lot of vegetables. My sandwich needs to be piled so high it won't close. For the finishing touches, you intended on topping your sandwich with hot sauce, salt and pepper, mayonnaise. And that's it. You nodded to yourself with a quiet hum, satisfied. The two of you bustled around the kitchen, opening and closing things in order to collect everything you needed for your individual sandwiches. You focused intensely on assembling your own for the most part. When you were close to being done, you thought you'd glance at your neighbor. Cove was putting his sandwich together delicately, his brow forward and tongue sticking out just barely. There were open jars of peanut butter and honey near his plate as well as a banana peel. So he was making a peanut butter, banana, and honey sandwich on mixed grain bread. That sounds actually pretty good. Maybe you'd have one yourself a different time. Curiosity satisfied, you turned back to your own plate and finished your own creation. By the time you were done, Cove had already cleaned up his workstation and turned to face you, studying your sandwich briefly. It gave it he gave it an incredulous look, but didn't question you about it. Good. Done? Yeah. Cool. He waited as you quickly returned the ingredients and cleaned a few utensils. Then the two of you collected your respective plates. You both agreed on heading upstairs to hang out in your room. You and Cove entered your bedroom while balancing your food on plates. Nothing fell, so it was a successful trip. Cove took a seat on the ground, stretching out on the hardwood floor in an attempt to keep a bit cooler. He immediately took a big bite of his sandwich, chewed, then hummed happily. The sandwich is really good. At least that's something. At this point you sat down and started on your own sandwich. You nodded. You were enjoying yours too? You shrugged it was okay. You scrunched up your face. It didn't turn out as expected. I eat this sandwich all the time. It's fucking bomb. But I do it with chicken instead of turkey. Obviously, you were a pro at making sandwiches. He leaned back on his hands while chewing, glancing around. His every movement was sluggish. Want to do something? It seemed the plan of not doing anything had already worn thin, despite his lack of enthusiasm. Yeah, like what? Maybe, not really. You couldn't even muster a reply. Like what? What are we gonna do, Cove? He rolled his head back, looking up at the ceiling. What about tic-tac-toe? You laughed at the suggestion, but you went along with it. Yeah, you. Neither of you had the energy for something more taxing. You grudgingly humored it. You thought it was a nice idea. Sure, why not? Why not? You put your plate to the side and pulled out some markers and scrap paper. You laid everything on the floor and he scooted back to make more room in front of you. Cove picked up one of the markers with his right hand while keeping half the slice of sandwich to his left. I want to be X's so you can go first. I think that's fair. Good, because I wanted to go first. You prepared to note down your first move, your marker hovering above the paper. Oh my god, do I actually get to play? Do I actually get to play? I have to. After the first round, you were about to take another bite of your sandwich when a thought occurred to you. I wonder if anyone turned the TV off downstairs. The TV was on earlier, but no one was really watching it. Then everyone started leaving the room. I know I didn't turn it off. It might still be on downstairs with nobody there. Ko smiled crookedly at that. Poor show, playing with nobody around to enjoy it. What's what was it? Uh he squinted off into the distance, trying to recall the show's name. I feel like it was some kind of crime solving drama. Cove nodded sheepishly, his eyes closed, then opened again with some effort. Can you give us any specifics? Maybe I can guess it. Well, you rested your chin on your open palm groggily, thinking hard as you could. I remember there was this woman with long blonde hair, I think. She was one of the ones solving crimes, like a detective or something. There was this scene at the police station because someone got arrested. You lapsed into silence, both of you thoughtful. Then Cove chuckled. It wasn't funny, but you joined in the laughter anyway. I don't know what that is. Me neither. I just saw it. Okay, so actually what I'm doing is uh I don't know if y'all have even seen Craig of the Creek, but in Craig of the Creek there's an episode where they play tic-tac-toe at this kind of like kid like casino thing, and there's a corner method that Craig uses that I started just using, and it actually works pretty fucking good. Won't lie. Another run came and went, and Cove grumbled as he adjusted himself. His features were twisted in a grimace. I feel so sticky. I'm gonna be stuck to this floor forever now. I have to charge you rent then. You can be my new roomie if you want. Looks like we'll both be stuck here forever then. I'm sticky too. No way, I'll peel you off if I have to. He smiled, whining. We'll just have to charge him rent. Yeah, how much? $50. I can't afford that. Well, you gotta pay up if you want to stick around. Gov shook his head at your terrible pun and went back to the game instead of answering father. You returned to the game. Ghost spoke up once more, catching your attention. He was peering down at the piece of paper between you, his expression thoughtful. You know, tic tac toe is such a weird name for this game. What does it even mean? Maybe the name did that way because people played it with ticks and tacks. I've always wondered about that. I have to look it up later. It's really a game. No one's sure where it came from. We'll look it up. Maybe I'll do that too. That said, the two of you turned your attention back to the game. Oop, you won. That was so easy. You didn't try at all, did you? Not really. He smiled at you in an amused way. You somehow weren't surprised by that, despite Cove being the one who suggested the game in the first place. He started to yawn, his hand coming up to cover his mouth quickly, transitioning into a small laugh. You understood why. Yawning, just as he said, was feeling disinterest, was kind of funny coincidence. You laughed along with Cove. Well, you shouldn't have taken the challenge more seriously. You're the one who wanted to play in the first place. Well, I'm still the winner and you're the loser. You shook him. We're all laugh, because all of those sound mean. Cove just grinned and flopped onto his back, leaving his marker on the floor beside him. You followed Cove's lead and laid down on your back, your hands resting on your stomach. The two of you just stayed like that for a while, silent. There wasn't much else to say, and neither of you felt up to another game after that. Time passed, and you even dozed off for a bit, despite the hot weather and uncomfortable hardwood underneath you. Finally, the blazing sun began to set. Your relief, the air cooled down a bit as a result. You pulled yourself off the floor, as did Cove, with some minor complaint. You both stretched your arms, groaning and yawning into your hands. Ugh, dry throat. You glanced out the window briefly, taking the soft reds, pinks, and purples of the late afternoon sky. Somehow you had made it through the scorching hot day in one piece. Cove turned towards you, rubbing the back of his neck. Thanks for letting me stay over. It's not that big a deal. Cove also looked out the window, noticing the sun's descent. I should probably go home now. Bye. Bye. Then he simply walked out of the room, made his way downstairs while you followed close behind. You needed to get out of your room anyway so you could grab something to drink. Cove made it to the front door hall, then glanced over his shoulder at you and he waved. You waved back, watching as he opened the front door and left. You let out a small breath. You felt pretty good in the moment. Looking back, it could have been a lot worse. See, the thing is, when you're not playing the romance route, there is so much less to do. But they released DLC for Derek that I'm going to buy, and we will probably do on this playthrough. Since we're not being romantic with Cove, I think there's stuff to be romantic with him in there, so we can do that instead. All right. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to hit like and subscribe to see more. That way you can come back when the next episode comes out and see what happens. Um Happy Thanksgiving to all of you, because this will be posting on Thanksgiving. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye bye.